Hello, and welcome back to a podcast to answer your question on addiction, recovery, and mental health by Wise Method Treatment Center and Rapid Detox. I'm Dwight Hurst. I'm a clinical mental health counselor and the co-host for the program. Grateful to be with you all again and to be with both y'all out there watching and listening and y'all here joining me on this panel. Always an excellent panel. We have a wonderful guest joining us today. So let me go around and introduce everybody. Clare Waismann is a registered addiction specialist and substance use disorder certified counselor, and she's the founder of the Waismann Method Opioid Detoxification Specialists, as well as a Domus Retreat. And then we're also joined by David Livingston, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. David is a psychotherapist and expert in the psychological elements of addiction, recovery, and just the general health management and emotional and mental underpinnings that attend to addiction. We're grateful to be joined, of course, by our medical director, Dr. Michael Lowenstein, who's an internationally recognized expert in anesthesiology, pain management, rapid detoxification, and just general addiction recovery. Hello, guys, by the way, all of those of you who are always here. And today we're joined by Ethan Pompeo. Ethan, welcome to our program.
Hi, thank you.
Ethan has personal experience dealing with his own journey and experience with PANDAS, which stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorders Associated with Streptococcal Infections. I should ask Ethan and Dr. Lowenstein to chime in and see if I said all that correctly, if that's what PANDAS is.
Yeah,
are you okay on that one, guys? Yeah. Ethan has become quite an expert in alternative and natural homeopathic type of alternative treatments to traditional pharmaceutical treatments, as he found that those were not effective and useful for him, and that the side effects were too costly and too high to be considered really to be doing much good. Particularly, he found a lot of help through the use of cannabidiol, also known as CBD. And Ethan, we're really grateful to have you here to tell us your story and some of the things about these products and the research that's been going on with CBD as well. So once again, very, very excited to have you on today. Could we start out by maybe telling everybody a little bit about your experience and your story? Maybe you could start also just by explaining, for those who don't know and aren't familiar with the condition of PANDAS, of what that means and how you came through this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got it right. PANDAS is an acronym that raises eyebrows, right? It's like, whoa, what is that? You hear about pandas and you think the cuddly black and white bamboo munching bear that everyone likes, but that's really has nothing to do with this, right? PANDAS is a very quick onset pediatric disorder that causes all kinds of neurofunction problems, like we have Tourette's syndrome-like symptoms, motor tics. We have all kinds of disruptive behaviors. And for me, my onset started when I was 13 years old. And quite literally, I went from being normal, so to speak, and healthy to being disabled with these neurological symptoms almost overnight.
Right. A lot of people wouldn't know that when they first recognized it. Was the diagnosis procedure, were those kinds of things difficult to get through before you even, and what's the education process like from a patient perspective?
So PANDAS is a clinical diagnosis, so there's no like blood test per se that you can take that's just quantitatively, yes, you have PANDAS. Diagnosing is all about looking at blood work and medical history and symptoms in order to put together the pieces to tell you, like, this is what we're dealing with. And this was 20 years ago when I started having my symptoms. So at this point, there was very, very little awareness and understanding of what this was. And so my first experience with conventional medicine was being misdiagnosed with Tourette's syndrome, which was essentially a label that was placed on me in order to prescribe me conventional drugs. And so by the time I was 17 years old, I had been on over 40 different prescription medications, none of which did the trick, many of which the side effects outweighed the benefits. And I was left with a distaste in my mouth for these physicians and doctors that I went to as, the frontline defense for what I was dealing with, and just really getting nowhere for almost a decade.
And at some point, that disenchantment grew into decisions, it sounds like, where you're starting to make decisions. How old were you when you started to decide you were going to pursue something different?
Yeah, that happened. The turning point was about the time I entered undergraduate school. So when I entered college, I had a lot of life changes going on, right? Naturally. And so that's when I decided, I'm done with these drugs. I'm done trying the pills, and I haven't seen much progress or path forward, and I started to look at alternatives. It was also the time where I actually got in touch with a clinician who was familiar with PANDAS and knew what they were talking about, which was a huge turning point for me, going from this diagnosis of Tourette syndrome where we didn't know what caused it, we didn't know how to treat it, to a PANDAS diagnosis where we understood the root cause was inflammatory based encephalitis of the basal ganglia, which is the motor cortex of the body, and a strep throat infection, which was causing the unusual autoimmune response in my body. So once we kind of identified the culprit of this, it was the key to healing, because no longer could I just treat symptoms with drugs, but I could look at this in a new light and forge a new path of treating the actual root cause of my illness in order to mitigate the symptoms more naturally.
And Dr. Lowenstein, we were just talking about some of the diagnostic procedure and the treatments for PANDAS, and Ethan was telling us a little bit about how the side effects became burdensome of the medication. The side effects of treatment had become burdensome as well.
Yeah, and that's the issue we see with a lot of the medications that affect the central nervous system. Oftentimes, side effects such as sedation can be limiting. It just can inhibit function. Even some of the antidepressants and anxiolytic medications. And then if you're taking them in combination, you get additional side effects. So someone who's young and healthy and trying to function, oftentimes it's the side effects that, kind of limit the ability to get therapeutic benefit.
What directed you towards working with CBD as a potential solution, Ethan?
My introduction to CBD was almost serendipitous. A little bit of background information for that. I used to be quite ashamed with what I was dealing with. I was unwilling to talk about it. And part of that is the compulsive behavior that comes with PANDAS, but also the shame and just knowing like, hey, something's wrong with me. I don't quite know what it is. That's quite a hurdle for people to get over, right? Nobody wants to admit that they have a problem. So I think the use of conventional medication was normalized in my mind through those years of trying this drug and that drug and, not really getting anywhere. So when I entered high school, I was introduced to cannabis, recreational cannabis, and I started to use that very heavily because for the first time in my life, it actually gave me some relief. I knew that when I smoked, my symptoms were dulled, my OCD was mitigated, I felt better, I felt more at ease, my anxiety was at rest, and so I relied on that very heavily.
It appears we have is everybody seeing? It looks like Ethan is frozen on his side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody can see that. We'll just wait with you here. And Ethan, you could tell us if you can hear us. Your audio visual just froze up. Let's see. This will be.
Sorry about that.
Section cat. Looks like Ethan's audio visual is reloading on. It must be an internet issue they're in Virginia. That's what it is. It's the Virginia internet. Hello, Ethan. You're back.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries.
I was.
You were just. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not here to condone cannabis use in any way. I'm certainly just saying that in my naive experience as a young adult, I knew that smoking relieved my symptoms when nothing else did. So I started to just give up on the conventional approach and use what I knew worked in order to give me some relief. So many years went by of just smoking perpetually throughout the day to mitigate my constant influx of symptoms. And I got to the point where that use model backfired as well. I started to experience paranoia and even increased anxiety from using it at a certain point. I started to have breathing issues and even run-ins with the law based on the regulations here in Virginia at the time. So my life started to spiral out of control as I continued to convince myself that like using cannabis every day was the right solution. The turning point for me there was when I understood how cannabis was actually interacting with my body. Not that it just made me feel better, but physiologically how it was working. And through studying the plant compounds more and learning about the different active ingredients in cannabis, I learned that CBD is in fact nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory. And so through using cannabis, the CBD that I was ingesting, without even having knowledge that this was happening, it was actually reducing the inflammation in my basal ganglia, which was thereby reducing my symptoms. So I needed to step back from that use model and find a way to get the CBD without the THC or the other compounds or the risks associated with smoking. And so that's exactly what I've done. And today I completely stepped back from that. I'm off all prescription medications. I don't smoke at all anymore, and I simply rely on CBD and lifestyle change and other anti-inflammatory supplements to get relief.
We talk a lot on here about the psychological dynamic of self-medication, right? That people tend to reach out. A lot of times use of what can even be legally illicit substances or whatever, we tend to treat that as a problem when in fact many times it's a attempt at a solution, right? And people do tend to seek out something that they need. And so it's very interesting to me that, you got people in your life at that point, the legal system in particular, were saying like, this is a problem, this is a problem, the problem. And you're like, well, this is helping though. And it's amazing that you're able to find a healthy route to isolate the part that was helping the situation to get yourself out of that. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I grew up in a very conservative family, and so we battled internally with that as well. I mean, my parents busted me, I can't tell you how many times, for smoking and said, you shouldn't be doing this. And I remember one evening I came home from school and my dad said, Ethan, have you been smoking? And I said, Dad, why are you asking me this? And he said, because you're just so calm, you're so relaxed, like you're not having any tics. And I said, Dad, like bingo, now do you understand why I'm doing this? And it's like the light bulb went off in his mind and understood, yeah, like, maybe it isn't just about getting high and having fun, but maybe there is some truth to this and how it's helping you.
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
Good for you for, hanging in there and getting creative and educating yourself on what it is that's going to get you where you need to go. I think one of the things I talk about sometimes in our other podcasts at times is that often people, they don't get the success in the treatment they need because it gets frustrating. There, depending on what course you take, there's usually limits and coping mechanisms, pretty much all fade out at some point in time. So you have to sort of become more resourceful and creative like you did and educated yourself clearly and figuring out what it was specifically that was medicinal for you, which allowed you then to sort of move into another area and then actually create a business and a platform for helping people with the products that you create. It's, it's helped you and others, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's not an easy journey, and I don't mean to underplay the symptoms that I faced. I mean, PANDAS is a devastating diagnosis for the patient and their families. I mean, I had anger and rage associated with not being able to control my motor function. Just again admitting that like something's wrong with me and we don't know how to get help is an isolating, lonely place to be. And I think regardless of what illness or disability or addiction you face, it's you feel like you're all alone in the world and that like nobody can help you. And so if identifying those tools and resources and people who can speak into your life and help you take the next step is key.
And it goes to something we talk about a lot, which is the importance of healthcare professionals listening to patients and treating them as the experts of their own bodies and their own experience. Dr. Lowenstein, I wanted to ask about some of your experience and knowledge of the research into the anti-inflammatory properties and other some of those other benefits of CBD.
Yeah, CBD is a fascinating compound, and it's very interesting as we have cannabinoid receptors in our body, and our body makes endocannabinoids, means made internally. So, there's the cannabinoid receptors and cannabinoids, and just to say CBD is a phytocannabinoid, so it comes from a plant, and the ones we make are on our own are endocannabinoids, but we definitely have receptors throughout the body. And the interesting thing about CBD is it kind of modulates the entire nervous system. So there's we have neurotransmitters, but CBD kind of has an effect on all the different body systems. It affects the GABA receptor, which is the same receptor that benzodiazepines like, Xanax works on. Alcohol works on the GABA receptor. It works on the serotonin receptor. So it's really a very fascinating molecule. And that's why we see so many benefits from it. It can help pain. It can help inflammation. It can help with seizures. It can help with sleep. And CBD, unlike, THC is the psychoactive component, where CBD has no psychoactive components. So there's some really strong literature coming out, with use in seizures, pain, sleep, gut, all those things. So I think it's a really fascinating molecule, and when made properly, and when you're getting good quality CBD, I think there's a real place for it in pain management.
Do we see a lot of stigma still surrounding this? Because I know that the people go back and forth on this argument about the use of cannabis or medical marijuana, and there's of course different attitudes about that. Do you find that people misunderstand what CBD is? Particularly Ethan, I guess, but anybody can chime in.
Ethan, you go, then I'll comment on that as well in my pain patient population.
Well, I appreciate your understanding of the endocannabinoid system. It's quite fascinating, like you said, and I think it's designed to be self-sustaining if we are giving our body the inputs it needs to effectively produce those endocannabinoids. If we're battling health crisis or we're not doing things correctly, that's when we run into perhaps a deficiency where supplementing with phytocannabinoids and these plant-based compounds can be very beneficial. When I started my business in 2015, CBD was still considered hash here in Virginia. Nobody really knew what it was. The legality was a gray area, and people thought I was crazy for dabbling with it. And since then, I have just been a proponent for education and promoting awareness for this compound. And so the beginning of my journey, I started making it for my own needs. I knew this worked for me, but being in Virginia, there was no place to get my hands on it. So I reached out to some friends in different states, managed to get some raw materials sent to me, and I started manufacturing different oils and different concentrations and gummies and anything I could do to get this compound in my body to give me some relief. And soon family and friends started reaching out to me about it. Hey, what is this? What are you doing? Granny wanted it to help her with her sleep. Grandma wanted it to reduce her knee pain, and friends were interested. And so I started to break down those walls and say, look, this is not a marijuana product. This is something that is safe for everyone to take. Right, my products are completely THC free, so you're not going to get mixed up navigating through my website and buy something that's going to get you feeling intoxicated. There's no risk there. The idea is to get all the benefits of plant medicine without the inherent risks or intoxicating aspects of this. So for people who are on the fence or still skeptical about CBD, this could be a great starting point in order to get some relief from your inflammation and these other symptoms that Dr. Lowenstein mentioned, again, without the risks.
Yeah, and from my medical practice standpoint, I have a lot of, chronic pain is very prevalent in older patients, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you give them opiates or you give them benzos or medicines to sleep or for pain, and they're sedating, they affect cognitive function. So you'd be surprised how many of the senior patients were willing to give up these prescription meds to try even very low dose CBD. You start very small, like 1 or 2 milligrams, and work up from there. And they had some very good results. And, once you explained everything that Ethan just talked about, as far as, no psychoactive properties like with THC, they're really open to trying it. And you'd be amazed how many seniors are actually using CBD products to sleep and for anxiety and for all the other, and for pain.
And it makes it beneficial, as you mentioned, Ethan, to have source of a location where you can find something that isn't many CBD products are sold at a dispensary or a place where you find things with THC, and then there's that crossover there. And I guess that one of the biggest risks is that may keep people away from trying it at all.
Right. I noticed that was the case from the very beginning. And in fact, the first kind of retail locations to adopt CBD were the smoke shops. And it seemed counterintuitive to me to send grandma to go into the tobacco shop to help with her knee pain. It's like my grandmother would never step foot in a store like that. So I realized, yes, there was demand for this, there was a need for it, but there was really the need was for a product that people could trust.
I'm curious with, and particularly David and Claire, what kind of things do you see with the association with long-term pharmaceutical use and some of the psychological effects that has on people, and how it ties in with people coming into detox and treatment?
You want to go, Claire, or I can?
No, go ahead.
Well, as being pointed out, you don't want to develop a habit or any sort of physical dependency to medications, which, if you stay on them long enough, begins to happen, and the body does adapt in some way. So if you have a medicine like CBD that can just go directly to help with the inflammation or the pain source, then that is just such an incredible win. And, like we're talking about, the ability to sort of differentiate from the THC and educate people and help people feel comfortable, I'm sure is immensely useful. And I think that, one of the things that I see, I talk about this all the time because it's true that what drives addiction typically is perceived helplessness along with frustration. So Ethan, you worked through this. You went through immense periods, I'm sure, of helplessness, not sure how you're going to get better or getting better, and then having the unwanted side effects of the THC where you were getting to have the effects of that. So what people are really looking for is just always just a way forward that, that is, makes their life better, per se. So you found that, and that's, I think, what you're talking about with your medicine. And so, it always varies depending on what an individual situation is, but a way forward is the key, I would say, that makes sense to people. If you can make sense to people and they can buy into it, and then it has enough of the effect they're wanting, then things really do get better.
That was absolutely my experience. I mean, it was like CBD gave me the relief I needed to take a deep breath and step back from my situation in order to get a bigger picture, like what needs to change in my life, like what stressors do I need to get rid of, uh, diet change, getting off the couch and starting an exercise routine. All of these things we know we should be doing in order to benefit our health. It can be very difficult to do when you're feeling stuck and alone, dealing with a disability or a chronic illness.
Yeah, yeah, and the fact that you persisted and were creative, that is, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've told people that that's the goal, and it's hard to do on your own because none of us, you know, I mean, you obviously took a deep dive into this and researched this and really educated yourself, I can tell. And but not everybody does that, and we often need is help with that, and other perspectives to help us move out of the frustration and the feeling that we're trapped, you know. And so and because once people feel like they're stuck, that's when things can get, you know, dangerous or really head in a bad direction.
As you were
Michael,
doing,
let me ask you a question. Would you indicate CBD to everyone, or is there patients that there's contraindications for? Does it act with other drugs? You know, would you be concerned if somebody that had an addiction issue?
So I think one of the places where there's still some questions is pregnancy. So I wouldn't at this point advocate for a pregnant patient, or maybe even someone who's breastfeeding. In my experience in looking at the literature, you know, could be some side effects, but it seems to be very well tolerated. I don't think there's any specific contraindications with prescription medications. Kind of what Ethan touched on also is, well, people have issues with even opiates or marijuana or THC. Anything that produces euphoria, I think people get tolerant to that effect. And that's what the people will use more and more and more, right? With CBD, since you don't have that psychoactive or euphoria associated with, I don't see the same issues with people just dose escalating. So they kind of figure out that lowest effective dose and kind of stick with it. So I haven't, in my experience, which is limited, but you know, I have used it for my pain patients. I haven't seen the issues associated with those drugs that have more psychoactive effects.
Great.
what's been your experience with that, Ethan, with what you've observed?
So what's interesting about CBD is, although it's derived from cannabis or hemp plants, there have been several clinical trials that have revealed that CBD can actually help with addiction therapy programs. So people who are on painkillers or opiate drugs have an easier time withdrawing and eliminating those compounds from their life while taking CBD. I like to compare it to immunotherapy. So I took allergy shots as a child, with the idea of exposing your body to these allergens in order to build up a tolerance to them. And one thing they told me before my appointment each day is to take an antihistamine. And the purpose of the antihistamine is to reduce the risk of anaphylaxis or negative reaction, right? You take the antihistamine to give your body a fighting chance against the allergens that are being injected in your body so that it's a little bit easier to cope. The effect of the immunotherapy and the tolerance buildup of those allergens is the same, but the antihistamine makes it a little bit easier for your body to cope and adjust to that so that you don't have a bad reaction. I view CBD as kind of having the same effect with these other issues we're talking about. So it makes it a little bit easier for your body to adjust it while taking CBD. I use it in combination with cognitive behavioral therapy, which has also been studied to show that there's kind of a synchronicity between the two. While doing my cognitive behavioral therapy training and retraining my brain to respond differently to external stimuli, which drove me crazy and triggered my tics. Taking CBD before those therapy sessions actually made it a little bit easier so that I can make progress in my CBT training without losing my patience or going crazy. So it's been very helpful in kind of redirecting my journey there and making my training a little bit easier.
Ethan, it was interesting as we were setting up for the recording. You and Dr. Lowenstein were talking about some of the ongoing research, and I was curious if either of you would like to comment a little bit on what kinds of studies are being done and what's being investigated currently. And Ethan, I know that your company is involved in some of that, right?
We are, yeah. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we're currently working with University of Virginia on a clinical trial for oral CBD for chronic pain management. So an osteopathic surgeon at UVA who's leading the charge on that, he's interested in seeing, is CBD an alternative for opiates or other conventional pain management medications for people who are recovering from surgery, which I think is incredible because, there's that classic notion of people going in for surgery, getting out, taking opiates, and becoming completely helplessly addicted to it because, with good intentions, they went into this and now they're hooked on a substance. And so we can offer a product that's non-addictive, much, much safer, and clinically studied. That could be a wonderful alternative for people.
Well, let me say I have a final question for you, Ethan. But before I do that, is there any other questions that other members of our panel here have for Ethan? Give you guys a crack at it.
I'm learning as we go.
Yes,
Me too.
It's been and it has been super informative. I'm learning a lot of things that I'm just thinking of all the people that I want to share this with. Kind of my last question for you, Ethan, is if there was one thing that you wish more people understood about healing, what would that be?
I would say that you're not alone. For a long time, I suffered with self-inflicting anxiety about my situation. I didn't want to admit that there was something wrong with me. I felt isolated, felt alone. I felt like nobody could help me, right? And that's just it's so far from the truth, right? The opposite is true. When I learned that it's okay to talk about what I'm dealing with and be open and honest with others about my situation, completely changed my perspective. And I think sometimes we can get in the way of our own healing by telling ourselves, look, you're never going to get better, or you're the only person who's dealing with this. Buying into those lies, like, the mind is so powerful and integral in our healing journey. And getting over that, getting out of that mindset of woe is me is so important. So just realizing you're not alone and learning to just be okay with yourself, regardless of what obstacles you're facing, it can be very healing in and of itself. And it can definitely put you in the right direction in being open to trying other things, continuing the research, pushing forward, and not giving up. So that's what I recommend.
And is that... Go ahead, David.
That was so well said. I appreciate you saying all of that. I mean, you just kind of summed up the core of what interactive treatment is when it goes well. Is right, the two people coming together and figuring things out together, and through the ease and the good understanding, and things open up, and there becomes more potentials, more creative solutions, more options, and more ease, right? And when there's more ease, the whole body, that's what you're talking about with the CBD, that it creates a certain type of ease chemically in the body. And same thing psychologically, when there's an ease, when there's a relaxation. And one of the great things, one of the amazing things I think about just being human is that the more we can relax into anything, the less we suffer from it. And that is both chemically, psychologically, emotionally, it goes across the board. So, your ability to, which you just said so well, I couldn't agree with that more. And so, CBD and talking and relaxing and having somebody you can do that and understands it, and you open up and things get better from that. So thank you for that.
And it's a wonderful example of creating and resources that are not there, that are not there for you to find them and research them and create them. It's a very good example I think for all of us. And I'm so grateful, Ethan, for you being here to share that story with us and those insights. Do you want to tell people where do they find you to follow your work online?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is greenvalleynutrition.com. I have a blog on there where I talk more in depth about my battle with PANDAS and my journey and other lifestyle changes I've made that have been integral to my healing process. But it's a wealth of information on there. I mean, anything you want to learn about CBD or PANDAS resources, advocacy groups, and just general information about our product, it's all on there. You can also use our chat or email feature, even call us if you have specific questions. We're here to help. And again, our goal is not to get you on CBD and keep you on it for the rest of your life, right? Like the idea is use this as a tool or a stepping stone to your healing journey so that it can make things a little bit easier for you to adjust and make those changes necessary to fully heal.
Well, thank you again. And speaking of resources and speaking of wanting to help, we want to help. That's why we're here. And we want to hear from you listeners as well. We want to know what your questions are about addiction, recovery, mental health, and, oh gosh, just about anything that we talk about on here, which is a lot. There's a lot out there. So please reach out to us. You can email us at info@opiates.com. Go to our website, opiates.com, or really you can find us at Opiates on all of your favorite social medias. This show is a production of the Waismann Method Opioid Treatment Specialists and Rapid Detox. Our introductory music is the song Medical by Clean Mind Sounds. And on behalf of myself and the rest of our team here, I want to thank everybody for listening. Please share and rate and review on your podcatchers of choice so that our message can go out to more and more people. I want to remind everyone out there to keep asking questions, because when you ask questions, you can find answers. And when you find answers, you can find hope. We'll be back with you again soon. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Yeah.